You see it everywhere, right? On buildings, trains, bridges. But have you ever stopped to wonder where graffiti actually comes from? Well, today, we're going to peel back all those layers of paint and history to find the real story behind the writing on our walls. Let's jump in. So, let's start with the big question. Who invented graffiti? I mean, who was that very first person to grab a spray can and put their name out there for the whole world to see? Now, it sounds like it should be a simple question, but trust me, the answer is a wild ride through legends, citywide rivalries, and an impulse that is way, way older than you probably think.
Okay, so before we even touch on spray paint, we've got to go back, like way back. This little piece of gossip was literally scratched into a wall in ancient Pompeii. It's a personal dick, right? Preserved forever in volcanic ash. And it just goes to show you this urge we have to leave a mark, to share a secret, or even just to throw some shade in public. Yeah, that's been part of us for a long, long time. And it wasn't just in ancient times. Fast forward a couple thousand years to World War II. You had American GIs leaving the Kilroy was here doodle absolutely everywhere they went. It was basically a meme before memes were even a thing. So you see, this long human history of making a public statement is the perfect setup for what was about to explode in American cities in the late 1960s.
All right, so now we get to the birth of the modern movement. And this right here is where the debate gets really, really heated. Everybody wants to know, who was graffiti's patient zero?
In this corner, hailing from Philadelphia, we have an absolute legend, Cornbread. This guy started writing his name all over the city back in the mid-1960s, and honestly, the stories about him are just epic. Cornbread's biggest claim to fame was that he was the first writer to truly go all city. And don't worry, we're going to break down exactly what that means in just a minute. But to get people's attention, he famously tagged an elephant at the Philly Zoo, and even the Jackson 5's private jet. See, he wasn't just tagging his own block, he was out for citywide fame.
But hold on, the Philly story isn't the only one out there. Our next contender takes us to New York City, Julio 204.
And this really gets to the core of the whole argument. People who back Julio 204 say, yeah, Cornbread got famous, but Julio was hitting walls up in his New York neighborhood even earlier. Their point is pretty simple. Being famous doesn't automatically mean you were first.
Which brings us to our final major player, a Greek-American kid from Manhattan who basically became a phenomenon, Taki 183.
You know, Taki 183 might not have been the absolute #1 first, but he was the first to go viral. He worked as a messenger, so he was all over the 5 boroughs, and he left his tag everywhere he went. Then, in 1971, the New York Times wrote a whole article about him, and boom, that was the spark that lit the whole fuse. It inspired thousands of other kids to pick up a can and get their name out there.
So, let's clear up this term we keep using, going all city. It was the ultimate prize. It wasn't about just being known on your street. It was about getting your name up everywhere, achieving fame across the entire city. And the subway system, it was the perfect vehicle for that. Literally, it was like a moving gallery that would carry your name from the Bronx all the way down to Brooklyn, making you a legend in the scene.
But you know, this whole debate over who is first kind of misses the bigger picture. The real question is, why did this all blow up in 1970s New York? This wasn't just a few kids doodling. No, this was a perfect storm of social and economic pressures that gave birth to an entire culture.
I mean, you have to picture it. The New York of the 70s was a city in total crisis. Places like the South Bronx were literally on fire. You had young people, especially from Black and Latino communities, who felt completely ignored, totally powerless. And in this landscape of urban decay, the city's walls and trains became their canvas. It was a way to shout to the world, I exist, and to claim a piece of a city that seemed to have forgotten all about them.
And graffiti wasn't happening in a bubble. It became one of the 4 essential pillars of hip-hop culture. You had the DJ with the music, the MC with the rhymes, the B-boy with the dance, and right there with them was the graffiti writer, creating the whole visual identity for a movement that was about to take over the world.
So, we've got the why. Now let's get into the how. Because the art itself evolved at a dizzying speed. It went from a simple name on a wall to these incredible, complex masterpieces.
And there was a system to it, a clear progression. You'd start with your tag, just your name, your signature, written everywhere you could. Then you level up to the throw-up, which was bigger, had bubble letters, and was a faster way to cover a lot of space. But the ultimate goal? That was the piece, short for masterpiece. This was where you showed off your real artistic talent and fought to become a king of the scene.
So how did you become a king? Through style wars. Now, this wasn't a physical fight. It was an all-out artistic battle. Writers were constantly trying to one-up each other, inventing new ways to bend letters, new 3D effects, crazy color combinations. This fierce competition was the engine that just drove the art form's incredible evolution.
And this artistic arms race led to something called wild style. This was the absolute peak. The letters were so twisted and tangled up and abstract that to an outsider they were almost impossible to read. It was like a secret code, a visual language that only people inside the culture could understand. It was the ultimate flex of skill and style.
Okay, so that was then. How did we get from subway cars covering wild style to what we see today? Well, that raw letter-based style of the 70s and 80s laid the foundation for the global street art movement we all know now.
And that shift was a pretty big deal. The original movement, right, was all about your name. It was about fame, about competition. But what we call street art today is often more about images, characters, and messages. The artists got older, more women started joining in, and the toolkit grew way beyond just spray paint to include things like stencils, posters, you name it.
And you can draw a straight line from those pioneers to an artist like Banksy. He's carrying on that same rebellious tradition of putting art in public without permission. The difference is, his focus isn't on personal fame, it's on political commentary. He uses stencils to deliver these sharp, witty messages that resonate all over the world. The spirit of Taki 183 is still there, for sure, but the goal has totally changed.
So, the next time you see a tag on the side of a train or a huge mural on a brick wall, what are you really seeing? Is it just vandalism, or is it something more? Maybe, just maybe, it's the newest chapter in a story that started way back in Pompeii, a story about our deep, fundamental need to just declare against everything, I was here. The writing isn't just on the wall, it's our history.